fans, it's time for Flames Unfiltered, your spot for Calgary Flames hockey talk. Choking off a third period 2-goal lead against the Blues on Tuesday night. Oh, was that the low point of the season? Good evening and welcome to another edition of Flames Unfiltered, hosted by Burud and Kyle Lewis. Kyle, good to have you with us.
Always a pleasure. Lots to talk about as usual, and not necessarily a lot of positive things, I guess.
This isn't going to be a normal show, Kyle.
No, and I'm in a bad mood, so it's well timed.
I've had one of those weeks where my anger level's been high.
Mm-hmm. And in general, or because of the Flames?
I think the Flames sparked it. I've had a couple other things that have kind of egged it on a little bit, you know?
Yep.
But I was actually, it's funny you say that because I was talking to one of the guys at work today and he's like, how's your week going? I said, it's going like crap. And he's like, how come? I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, it's because the Flames keep choking off leads, right? And I'm like, shut up. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not been great for sure.
No, it really hasn't. And I don't know. We got a lot to talk about. Last weekend, I went to Grand Forks, North Dakota for an NCAA hockey weekend with my family. We had a little post-Christmas with my wife's side of the family, and we all like hockey, so we went to a college hockey game, and it was fun, actually. It was really, really fun.
College hockey's great. 2
good games at the most beautiful hockey arena I've ever been in, Ralph Engelstad Arena. And actually, I met after the game on Friday night. I met up at the bar, and I ran into Jason Blake. Do you remember Jason Blake?
I do remember Jason Blake, former New York Islander and Toronto Maple Leaf.
And I had a cold one with Jason Blake and visited with him. I knew him from when I was younger, but I hadn't talked to him for a long, long time. And I don't think he remembers.
What's he doing now?
He lives in Eden Prairie, and his son is Jackson Blake, who is a Carolina Hurricanes draft pick and plays for the University of North Dakota.
Nice.
And just finished playing in the World Juniors. So, visited with him for a little bit. That was kind of fun. Talked college hockey, talked to old NHL hockey, and it was fun.
That's how I know I'm getting older, because all the guys that I grew up watching play, all their kids are in the league now, or damn near in the league.
I know. It's crazy. I got a question for you before we get started, and it's a junior hockey question.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into an argument with a buddy of mine the other day about the Memorial Cup.
Yep.
And I love the Memorial Cup. I've been to the Memorial Cup twice. I think it's, a super prestigious tournament to get to, and it's the be all of junior hockey in Canada. But I don't like that the host city gets an automatic spot. Is that dumb of me? And here's why. We have a trade with Kamloops and Everett the other day that included 10 draft picks and 4 players going one way, including 4, I believe it's 3 or 4 first-round picks. So they're going to kill their franchise off for the next decade.
Yeah.
For a shot at this when I don't know. Am I wrong on this, Kyle? Or I don't know. Give me your take.
Well, we hosted here in Moncton. We hosted the Memorial Cup back in 2005, and the idea at the time was that, as it often is as a host city, like you got to stack your team. And
sure.
The Moncton Wildcats are owned by like the biggest business tycoons, the Irving family in Eastern Canada. So, they did that. They lined their. Got every player, and there's some big names in that team. Brad Marchand, Luc Bourdon was there. The former Canucks player, passed tragically years ago, and he was a really highly touted defenseman. I believe Brandon Gormley as well, who was a Phoenix, now Arizona draft pick. Anyway, I don't like the system because, like, I don't know how to explain that. It does motivate a team to ice like a really good hockey team, because you're the host city and you want to do well, of course. But to me, it's almost like the junior hockey equivalent of tanking for a draft pick, but it's the inverse, right? So you're trying to stack your team, as much as you can. And the reality, it's not so much what you're doing for your team as what you do, as you just said, to the other team, right? So you're going to absolutely pillage some of the team's roster to stack yourself because you're the host city. And then so the other team is just, they gave up everything to get whatever prospects and picks you could throw their way. It's just like, it's such an instantaneous emptying of the cupboards or stacking it. Like, there's no progression, right?
How do you afford? So like Kamloops, for example, they send literally, I'm not joking, 10 draft picks and 4 players for 2 players, albeit good players. But now Kamloops isn't going to be worth a crap for a decade. Like, how do you sell it off to the fans?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
And you're probably not going to win.
Yeah, and so like in our case, again with the Wildcats here, 2020 we had a stacked team, a completely stacked team. Jacob Peltier was our captain at the time, and the last game that I saw prior to the COVID shutdown, Peltier scored the overtime winner 3-on-3 against Alex Lafreniere and Rimouski. So it was like the place was sold out, it was rocking, whatever, and Moncton they were like favored to win the Memorial Cup, to win at least their league and probably Memorial Cup. But because it didn't happen, because the COVID shutdown, they went immediately in the opposite direction. So that summer, they traded Jacob Peltier. I think it was to Val d'Or. That was just prior to his first season in Stockton, and now, of course, with Calgary. So immediately, and this is one of the worst things I find with junior hockey, is that you go from being like a contender and a stacked team to immediate rebuild. And the team's been terrible ever since. I think they're in a playoff spot right now, but they're not a good team at all. And everybody, like, at least people who follow the team closely, like I do, were like, man, that 2020 team was going to go places, and it didn't happen.
Oh, it seems like such a high price to pay. But I don't know. That's my rant about junior hockey, and I love junior hockey, but it just seems crazy. Tons to talk about on the show today. We're going to recap 3 games, 2 of which were probably, I don't know, in my mind, the most disappointing of the year. And then we roll into some Flames news, touch on the All-Stars, call-ups, injuries, some slight news on Oliver Kylington. Then it's time to get into the problem. Why? Mid-season mark of the Flames, and it's been disappointing to say the least. We're going to discuss that, talk about is Darryl Sutter maybe a little bit to blame, and Kyle and I will give our take on that controversial topic, and then we'll wrap up with a preview of 3 Central Division road games ahead that are pretty much must win. So lots to talk about on today's show. Sit back, enjoy some Calgary Flames hockey talk, Flames Unfiltered. All right, Kyle. Start with the Islanders. They come to the Saddle Dome on Friday evening. I did not see this one live. I had to watch it recorded. I don't know. I didn't think it was a bad game. I thought it was a pretty good game. The Flames got off to a quick start, 3 goals. I was happy to see Coleman get another one. And Zadorov, he keeps scoring. That's good.
Yeah. It wasn't a great game, but they had a tired Islanders team and took full advantage of them. That's what you have to do, especially on home ice, right? So it wasn't like a remarkable effort. It wasn't a bad effort. I did actually manage to watch that game live, and it was pretty much what I expected. I couldn't see them losing that game, especially after the Islanders, coming on the second half of back-to-back. But nothing stood out for any great or any wrong reason. And I agree with you about Coleman. Like, I think he's been one of the Flames' better, probably their best forward actually of late, and he really shone in that game as well.
Yeah. A couple of things that I thought were interesting when I was just panning through the score sheet. 21 shots, second lowest all time this year.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's way lower than we normally do. We were 0-for-2 in the power play. The power play has been struggling. Mm-hmm. And we were surprisingly out-hit by the Islanders 31-19, which is another thing that usually the Flames are out-hitting opponents. So a couple odd things, but you know what? What the hell? I guess it doesn't matter how you get there. We win 4-1 and get 2 very, very important points.
Yep.
Then we hit the road and head to Chicago for what I hate, those Sunday night games in Chicago.
Yeah.
They piss me off, man. I'm so glad I'm not a Blackhawks fan. I just think it's the crappiest time to have a game, Sunday late afternoon. I just think it sucks.
It's funny. As soon as you said that, I immediately, for some reason, thought of a game in Chicago where Jonas Hiller got the start in 14-15 maybe, and he was just lights out. I think the Flames won like 1-0 or something.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if that was a Sunday night game or not, but you just made me flash back to that. But yeah, I mean, what can we say about this game other than how tremendously disappointing it was?
Slow start right away. It was bad right away. Chicago Reichel scores. Nephew of former Flame Robert Reichel.
Yep.
And you know what's weird about him? He's number 27. And I don't know. Is that weird seeing 27 on the Blackhawks? Should that not be retired? That's Jeremy Roenick's number. Like, what are we doing?
Probably should be. And if I'm not mistaken, his uncle wore 26. So
yeah, Robert Reichel was 26.
Yeah. And he was a damn good player too. I don't know. Jeremy Roenick, when I think of the Blackhawks, and I mean, I'm sure kids that are, well, it's probably not kids now, I guess, but people in their 20s are going to look back and think about Taves and Kane. I look back and think about Roenick and Amani and those, American.
Who else I think of? Steve Larmer. He was good.
And now I'm thinking of Steve Sullivan. Man, we can make a game out of this. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, yeah, it probably should be. And the guy was a legendary Blackhawk. And very, very, very nearly became a Calgary Flame at one point as well, actually.
Really?
Yeah, the summer he signed with San Jose, he said this in his book, I guess. I haven't read it, but I knew at the time he was close to signing with Calgary. Yeah, I think maybe it wasn't his book, maybe it was in a podcast, but he was like, it was between San Jose and Calgary, and I forget the reason why, but he very nearly signed with the Flames. But back to that game, like, it's like the epitome of a game you can't lose. The Blackhawks are horrendous.
And they're injured too.
Oh yeah, they're all everything about
Kane's not even in the game here. Like,
yeah, it's just really, really inconsistent. Like, I don't know. I found it so frustrating to watch. It was just maddening. 35 seconds into the second, Chicago scores and Markstrom gets yanked, and then right away, like I believe it was like 28 seconds later, Huberter scores. On what was actually a nice play by Lucic. So mark that down as me crediting Lucic with a good play. Then Kadri tied it up, and I thought, okay, I felt pretty good. Vladar was just playing great. I thought this is perfect, But when you need a point, you need a clutch goal in the third period. The Flames didn't get it again. And that's exactly what I was going to bring up as well. I mean, that ability to close out a game or to take the lead at a crucial time, like, it's just not there. And I felt the same way you did. I was really optimistic. I thought we were trending in the right direction, but I started to get that sinking feeling, as we headed to overtime. I'm like, this is gonna, it's gonna happen again. They're gonna fall flat, and I guess that's a great segue to the following game. So Walker Duehr plays. Okay. Yeah. So the St. Louis game. So Walker Duehr draws in, which I'm kind of happy about because I want to see these guys get a chance. Flames get scored on early, but respond really well. Played two really solid periods, I felt. Was it the second or the third St. Louis goal where Markstrom just let out a horrific rebound? I think it was the second.
Second one. Kicked it right up.
Oh, it was just... And that, to me, combined with what you said about Vladar in the Chicago game, that's when I was like, okay. And I said this on Twitter yesterday. Like, we're riding the wrong goaltender right now.
Completely.
Markstrom has been much better at times than he was earlier in the season, of course. We've talked about that. But I don't care what you're paying a goaltender or what his term is or what his role is on paper. You ride the hot hand, and, Dan Vladar he should be playing right now. He should have played last night. He earned it with the way he came in Chicago. Basically stole them a point that they didn't really deserve against the bottom-feeding team. So, what was your take on last night's effort?
Well, I started off with all those little penalties, ticky-tack penalties to start the game, and I thought, oh, geez. It kind of got the game off to a bad start. And then Lucic goal, I thought that was an amazing goal. That was a great pass. But even for Lucic, I might have to, lightning's going to strike me here. I'm talking good on Lucic twice here and within 5 minutes. That was a really good play to get that into the net. And then Backlund has a tip in front. You know, you get traffic in front of the net for once, and we get a tip in goal. We haven't had a lot of those this year. And then Majapani gets one in the slot, and all of a sudden we're up 3-1. And I'm thinking, all right, second period, we had a really good second period. I don't know. I was going to text you. I almost thought it was one of our best second periods of the year. Like I thought it
so
was
too.
good.
That's actually why Manjipani is my background for those watching on YouTube, because he had 8 or 9 high danger scoring chances last night. He looked like the Manjipani of last year at times, and that goal was very much the type of goal you'd expect him to score. So that was a big relief. But I felt the same way. Like I really felt it was a really, really strong period. I was really confident about how that game was going to finish, and I was dead wrong.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking in the third when it was boom, boom, 2 quick ones?
The same thing that's come up quite a few times. I mean, just the lack of composure, the lack of somebody stepping up to steal the game back. I don't know what it is. I mean, this team is just, something's lacking there.
When they scored the offside goal, right? And they went up on us. Did you, when it was reversed, did you think that was going to be a momentum change for the Flames, or did you think we were still going to be in trouble?
I don't know that I thought it was going to be a momentum change. I would like to think so, but based on how this team has struggled to rise to given occasions or opportunities, I didn't have a lot of faith it was really going to mean a lot to them or do much for them, because they just seem to be in a funk in those, like, they're a really good hockey team. It's just those moments where you need to rise to the occasion or pot that big goal or maintain your composure to protect the lead. Like, none of those little intangibles seem to be taking place.
Like when they got that one called off, like a normal team, like last year's team, I shouldn't compare to last year's team all the time, but I do. They would have like said, all right, that's it. This is over. We're going to go score right now and end this thing. This is crazy. Yeah. And last night I just watched the team after that goal was disallowed. There wasn't a pushback spark from the Flames. Like, hey, we got away with one here. And that pissed me off that I didn't see that.
Yeah, and we, like I said, we should have seen that. I mean, especially for a team that's coached, you know, as they are by a guy like Darryl Sutter, like you'd really expect them to be more opportunistic or to be like, okay, guys, like, you know, let's go out and make something of this. And we're just not seeing that in most facets of the game. Like the first couple of periods, the last few games were strong, or there was some back and forth. It just the third periods and how they respond. Whether it's by not finding a goal or not responding to adversity, like it's really, really frustrating.
It is. It is frustrating, and I don't know. Just those last 2 games were just really pushed me over the edge a bit. And
well, it's making me question myself in terms of what I said a few weeks ago. Like, we're going to know what this team is about. I think at this point, the halfway point of the season, we should have a better idea, and I think we're even less sure now.
We are. We're less sure. Yeah. They did announce some All-Star selections this week, and I don't know. I hate the All-Star game.
I despise it.
But Nazem Kadri was named for the Flames, and here's why. The only reason I'm bringing this up. You can go vote players in, right? And Milan Lucic is freaking petitioning on Twitter for people to vote him in because his daughters want to see him be in an All-Star game. And am I being a complete jerk for thinking that that's stupid?
No, it is stupid. It doesn't make you a jerk. It just means it's just stupid. I mean, good for him if it happens, or good for his family. I understand the appeal of it. I understand, you know, why he would want to do that, but it does.
But wouldn't you want to be an all-star and be a true all-star? Like, I don't want to be a voted in all-star. I want to be a true
John Scott.
Right. It's a gimmicky BS thing.
But that's the thing. And that's, I think, for hockey traditionalists or people like ourselves in this case, we got to kind of take it for the joke that it more or less is. Nobody cares about. The only thing I enjoy about the All-Star game is the accuracy competition and the hardest shot competition, because I find them kind of fun. And I mean, I grew up watching like Ray Bork win the accuracy competition, Albert Kemets winning hardest shot. Like that stuff to me left an impression and it was fun. But I mean, nobody cares about the game. The weekend's fun for the players, to be fair. Like I knew a few people who were at the All-Star game in Vegas last year and they had an absolute blast. But yeah.
You know what I do with that weekend, Kyle? I shut my computer.
Yeah.
and I take a couple days off from podcast stuff and Flames news and everything, and I kind of hit a reset button that weekend. It's kind of what I do.
Yeah, and I do this very similar things. I'm not interested in it. I'd like to say if at the Friday night I watch a bit of the skills comp, and that's it. So, but yeah, back to your question, it is dumb, but the whole All Star weekend's dumb. So, rather than take it seriously, I wish him luck in getting voted in for the sake of his family because I know it will be cool for them. But again, the whole thing is just a joke.
Injuries this week. Brett Ritchie placed on IR, upper body injury. I'm suspecting is a wrist. It looked like a wrist to me, but
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor there. Some call-ups this week. Jacob Peltier and Walker Dewar both called up from the AHL Wranglers. And then yesterday, Frank Saravelli reported that there will more than likely be some clarity in the Oliver Kylington team as he is receiving treatment from the player assistance program, which made me wonder a little bit. I don't care why he's gone, and I hope he's getting the right help. And I don't know whether it's mental health or addiction, even though we were told it wasn't. When I see player assistance program, he's going through some. Yeah. And I wish him the best. But I do think this team does deserve and need to have a little clarity in the next 2 weeks.
I don't know if there's any kind of a rule on this, but I would think it would be beneficial to all involved to have a cutoff date for these types of situations for the season, almost like the trade deadline. And maybe I'm reaching here, and maybe that's a heavy-handed idea because I don't know the circumstances, and I'm not here to judge whatever they are. I initially thought, and God forbid, but I thought maybe it was a family illness or something. Because
they said they were adamant that it wasn't an addiction thing. Yeah. And so I thought, well, it's got to be a family issue, which those usually would, I mean, I don't know. You don't want to speculate because, I mean, it could be, I don't know his living situation. It could be a sick child for all I know. And that be, that can take, who knows, but.
And it's easy to wonder, and we all did. And there was a lot of conjecture on Twitter about it, which that's what Twitter is. But it was like, okay, like whatever it is personal. But yeah, to me, like the team desperately needs his skill set in the back end. He's an offensive defenseman. He's got great wheels, great puck handler. He's a lot better defensively, I think, than he gets credit for, especially when he was paired with Tanev. And the team has to decide what they're going to do going forward because they are a bit weak on defense. And if he's not coming back, then they have to pivot from that. So I hope that Saravelli's correct and that there is going to be clarity in that situation and that it comes much sooner than later for all involved. I mean, if Oliver Kylington is struggling with something and it's not entirely resolved, then he's likely going to need the next few months, which is the balance of the season, to sort that out. If he's nearing a return and feels ready to return, well, the Flames need to know ahead of the deadline what they're going to do. Because as they're currently situated, and I think Tree Living or anybody else would admit this, they need him back or need somebody to help on that back end.
Mm-hmm. And he did say he is skating, so I don't know. We can only speculate. But I think the team deserves clarity. And let's hope we get that here in the coming weeks. Time to get into the heart of this conversation that we're having today, and let's talk about why I would sum up the midseason as disappointing, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Given the acquisitions they made and how this team was expected to perform, 100%.
So as we sit right now, and Kyle and I are recording this on Wednesday evening, in between the two Blues games, to put it into game day perspective for all of us Flames fans. The Flames currently sit in the first wild card position with 47 points. Colorado, Nashville, St. Louis, all nipping at the heels. Edmonton right there too. But crazily, Seattle and LA are in reach of the Flames too, if we could figure this out and get our act together. But I am so damn sick and tired of hearing, well, at least we got a point.
Yeah. So is Darryl Sutter, evidently. He was not very happy last night.
No, he wasn't. And you know what? He shouldn't be happy, right? I mean, I'd kind of been pissed if he was happy, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like the loser point, as it's called, the last two games was the most apt description of it because it was a loser's point. The team were emphatically losers in both those instances. because they didn't get the job done. They didn't respond with the opportunities they had. I mean, and maybe that's a little bit harsh. I mean, there's a lot of parity in the league, and the other teams deserve to win those games. It's just like we talked about earlier, the Flames just are not exhibiting any of the qualities you want to see in a team that is poised for, to make the playoffs or to have a playoff run.
Kyle, when I looked at the schedule this in coming up here, like after last week's episode, I looked and I saw, okay, we got the Islanders, very winnable. We got Chicago, must win. St. Louis, we should at least get 2 to 3 points out of that 2-game set. We got Dallas. That's going to be a tough one on the road. Then Nashville, we should, I looked at the schedule and I got Columbus, Chicago, Seattle, Detroit, Buffalo coming up. And I'm like, oh, here's our chance to make hay. And we just keep letting that opportunity just go by the wayside. And on nights when Edmonton keeps losing and stuff, and we need to be gaining ground, we're not gaining ground.
No, not at all. Not at all. And
what do you think the real problem is?
We talked about it a bit earlier, I guess before we came on. I think they're going to ride the hot hand, goaltending. So again, I'll point back to that goal in St. Louis last night that never should have happened with a really, really poor rebound. And it happens. I get that. But Dan Vladar should be getting more starts. He should be the starter for the time being. Give Markstrom a bit more of a break. Let him get his head together, spend some time with the goalie coach, whatever it is you need to do. So that to me is one element. Now there's a lot of defensive mistakes that have nothing to do with Markstrom's play. Some very bad mistakes. In terms of how to address that with the personnel, I'm not entirely sure, but at the other one, that's something that hopefully sorts itself out. But the other thing to me is the power play. The power play is awful.
The power play has to get going for us to be successful, number one. But you talked about defense. And I looked at this team on paper at the beginning of the year, and I thought, oh, defensively, we're rock solid. And I think I did this like 3 years ago, too. I looked at the Flames defense, and I'm like, wow, we're great. And we were junk that year on defense. Yeah. And this on-paper stuff is starting to make me worry because it never goes in our favor. But it just seems like the defense is so much sloppier this year. There's so much more breakdown here and a breakdown here or a miss pass here. And I don't know. It's a struggle bus back there. On a nightly basis, it's a real struggle.
Well, I think as well as he's played, for example, Nikita Zadorov is playing a little bit over his head in terms of the minutes he's receiving. Mm-hmm. And I'd say the same with Michael Stone, as much as I love the guy and I've, been chanting his name on this podcast since I joined.
We're the presidents of his fan club.
Yeah, absolutely. Apart from his phenomenal shot, he doesn't bring a lot else to the table. He's not particularly physical. He's not great positionally. So having him in the lineup quite so often, I don't think is particularly conducive to success, I guess. He's a great fill-in, but he's playing, a lot more than he otherwise would. So there's definitely some personnel issues there. And as we just talked about, Kylington's speed and puck moving ability, like the ability to get the puck out of your zone up the ice to your forwards to transition that play. It's hard to overstate how much they miss that, I think.
At the beginning of the year when we were kind of off to a roll and we were winning, what was it, 5 straight or whatever?
So you and I or the Flames?
No, not us. The Flames. We weren't on a roll. Me and you have been struggling like the Flames lately. But we got it going now. You know what? The thing is, I watched those games, and one of the things at the beginning of the year that I was so impressed is those quick passes right away. When the defense would get it, it was just boom, boom, up out of the zone.
Yep.
And we're not seeing that anymore.
No, not at all.
We're not seeing that. And this team is fully capable of that. We're not seeing it.
Yep. And
I wanted to touch on one other thing. Darryl Sutter mentioned that Dylan Dubé is probably the most improved player on the team. And you've been ringing the bell for Dylan Dubé at the beginning of the season. And I didn't disagree with you. And I don't disagree with you. I think Dylan Dubé has been a lot better as of late.
Yep.
But are we still getting what we expected from Dylan Dubé and even Mangiapane, who's been a lot better lately too? They're both been better lately. But as a whole, through this at the mid-season point, have we got what we paid for out of those two?
Dubé probably, or close to it at least. Mangiapane not at all.
But in a first line role, playing with who he's playing with, can we
Oh, no. Let me clarify that. He's elevated to a position right now that I don't believe he's earned, and he doesn't seem to have the skill set necessarily to make hay with it. But
No.
I think he's been good all year. Much improved, as we've said, as Darryl Sutter said, but that doesn't. How do I explain that? It frustrates me that players get put in positions like a top line position when they're just not that well suited to it, or it's not like Dubé went on a scoring tear and earned that spot either, right? Like,
No.
I know he's trying different things, but I'm going to transition this to a bit of another topic here that we talked about, again before we came on. But Elliot Friedman saying in 32 Thoughts that Calgary has to give their prospects a chance. There's no point having the press box. So to me, it makes a lot more sense rather than letting a guy like Dylan Dubé, who's essentially a known commodity, instead of putting him on a first line like that. You try a guy that you called up, like Matthew Phillips, who was here before, or a Jacob Pelche. Not to say that these guys are immediately top-line NHLers, but they have skill and can score, right?
But do you dare, and I'll play devil's advocate here a little bit, but do you dare put like a Pelche? I'm not saying he's going to go out there and like ruin the game, but like, quite honestly, he'd do as well as Dylan Dubé. So what am I thinking? But is it fair even to like just say, hey, you're on first line, but there's some defensive responsibilities that go along with that. You know what I mean? Because I do think Dylan Dubé has done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, to me, you just try it out. I mean, these guys are still professional hockey players. It's not like they're walking in the NHL. It's the first time they skated, right? And a guy like Jacob Pelche has an extremely high compete level. It's one of his biggest claims to fame. And I don't see any reason why they can't succeed in those roles. And that's what you see with a lot of other teams. They take a guy who scored at every other level, they bring him to the NHL. You're wasting his talents on the fourth line, or he's not a fit there for other reasons. Just try it out. And at the end of the day, you got to shake up your team outside of just who's already in your room. And you don't do it by recalling them and sending them the press box. So I don't know that Matthew Phillips would have scored a few goals had he been on a scoring line. I don't know that Pelche will, if assuming hopefully he plays tomorrow, if he was to be on a scoring line.
Do you not try it? Do you think Pelche would have a better chance of succeeding than Phillips? I do.
As a everyday NHLer, probably, but the scoring ability, Phillips has got a bit better offensive instincts, I think. But in terms of a guy that's plug and play with a Darryl Sutter type system, even though he's not that big himself, I think Pelche is a no-brainer.
We got to do something. I would like to see Pelche get plugged in with Huberdeau and Kadri.
Well, we all would, and you and I talked about this before too. Like, Lucci scored a nice goal, but the problem to me is that because he scored that nice goal and made a few decent plays, is that the coaching staff or somebody watching thinks, oh, he's doing okay in that role. He's still not.
Well,
let's not delude ourselves thinking that he is.
I hate to say this because he has done fine in the fact that they've put up points and they have had good production out of that line. So I'll give you that. But we're kidding ourselves if we think this is a long-term solution to third line or to second line success.
Well, it's not a solution to anything because the guy's on an expiring contract too, and if he's back at all, he's not going to be in that role.
If they re-sign him, you're going to talk me off a cliff, Kyle.
Listen, if it's a league minimum deal and he's an extra forward, I can live with it. Anything outside of that, I don't think that I could. This whole idea of intangibles, physicality and a big guy, like, I don't care. It's not conducive to winning hockey games in the NHL these days. It doesn't hurt to have it in some instances, but in some cases it does, especially when you have a guy like that on a scoring line. It makes no sense.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. So how did you feel about Walker Duehr's game last night?
I thought Walker Duehr did a pretty good job last night, but I didn't shut the TV off thinking, well, Walker Duehr really stepped up tonight.
Yeah,
I thought he did fine, but I mentioned, here's the way I look at that though. If Brett Ritchie was healthy, I would have rather had Brett Ritchie in just because he's been really good this year.
For what he is.
In that fourth line role.
Yeah. But even then, even if they're typically cast in the fourth line role, would you not agree that whether it was Walker Duehr or, as you just said, Pelche, or somebody else would be a better fit or a better opportunity on that second line, for example?
Oh, for sure. I think
now
that's
how you try your prospects.
If right now, when I look at their depth chart, right? Here's where I have my problems, Kyle. I love I love the Majapani Backlund Coleman line. Like you can't screw with that, right? I'm completely fine having Kadri and Huberdeau together, but we gotta fill out that hole that Lucic is there. I'm fine with the Lindholm Toffoli pair, but I don't think Dubé's that guy. Do you?
No, not at all.
Okay, I'm totally good having Rosiski, even though I want to strangle him most nights. Centering Lewis and Richie. I like that fourth line. I do. But I gotta find a guy to fill. I gotta find those two wings, man. I can't have Dubé centering my first line. I don't know that I don't. You know what? Let me throw something at you here. If we traded and got a legit left winger to take Lucic's spot, and then you had Ruziska center Dubé and Lewis or Lucic back and forth. You have, Dubé, Richie, and Ruziska as a fourth line. And then Lucic and as your extra. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like Dubé isn't the prototypical fourth liner, but he's not a first liner either. We can't screw up the Backlund Majapani line, and I don't know that he's the answer. I'd like a little bit better than Dubé to be with Kadri and Huberdeau. Yeah. We need a guy. We need a winger.
Well, try out the wingers you have, because that's the easiest thing to do, first of all. And again, like I said before, if nothing else, it brings some energy. Could help other guys elevate the game a little bit just with the passion they bring. Like, that's the biggest. It's the first thing you try is what you've already got. And it's not just the people you're dressing every night.
I'm with you. I think we need to. I've thought about this in my head a lot. I think we need to try some of the youth. I don't know necessarily where to plug them in. The Lucic spot screams at me a spot. I'm a little scared to plug him in the Dubé spot because I don't know how you look Dubé in the face and say, "Hey, you're going to sit in the press box." But like, I worry a little bit about like what happens if the prospects don't work. Then what do we got?
Well,
what do we expect from them though? God, like what? Like, okay, like Pelche. Let's say he gets the next 3 games. Playing alongside Kadri and Lucic, what do we expect? Like, what's going to make us happy? 3 games.
Alongside Kadri and Lucic or Kadri and Huberdeau?
Kadri and Huberdeau. 2 points?
Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know either, but I mean, that's the answer to the question. We don't know.
Yeah,
and that's why we need to. That's why we need to try it, because this, like, the reality of it is like, listen, the team is middling at best. They have a ton of loser points. That's the only reason they're anywhere close to a playoff spot. Like,
we need a spark,
and that's how you get the spark. But if you try these guys, they don't work. It's like my last relationship. Hey, I tried it. I found out. I get the answers I wanted. Right? It sucks sometimes, and it's not always what you want it to be. But you have to give it a shot. And if you're not willing to do that, then what the hell are you doing? Because what we're doing now isn't working. There's people who I think are, Lucic getting scratched a little while ago was a very, very healthy thing for this team to do. But then to bring him back into the lineup and he's playing a little bit better, but then just throw him on a scoring line makes no sense. You have guys that are young that have proven they can score at every other level they've ever played at. Give them a chance. And if it doesn't pan out, they say, you know what? Okay, now what? Well, we need to look a little bit harder at the trade market. Maybe we need to make a trade that shakes this team up because we've got too much money tied up in Kadri and Huberdeau and Markstrom and these guys. We can't miss the playoffs, and we sure as hell don't want to.
We have to make the playoffs. The cap, I mean, we're going to lose a lot of players. We have to have success this year. We have to.
Yeah, so the evaluation of your current personnel has to be ongoing in a meaningful way, and it's not meaningful when they're eating fucking popcorn.
I agree.
So hopefully we see Pelche tomorrow night. Like, Walker Dewar, really fast player. I like the way that he plays the game. So do I. And I told you before we went on here, like, he reminds me a bit of Garner Hathaway, right? I think he could be an everyday NHLer. I mean, Ryan Lomberg's an everyday NHLer. When he played for Flames, I'm like, man, there's no way this guy's going to stick anywhere. And I was wrong about that. Right?
He's so gritty. Yeah.
But you know what he is.
Yep.
He's not going to play on a scoring line. So what advantage is there plugging him in place of somebody else? I guess a guy like Richie who would be playing if he wasn't hurt. You already know what he is. You don't know what you have in Peltier. We need to find out.
Darryl Sutter. I always tooted the horn of Darryl Sutter. I've been a huge Darryl Sutter fan, and I don't think that'll change. But as of late, I have been frustrated with some of his decisions. Not frustrated like we were with Jeff Ward, but yet frustrated. I'm frustrated with the whole Lucic thing. I'm frustrated with these are just some things we touched on earlier. I'm frustrated with Vladar not getting the reins right at the moment here. I'm frustrated that the youth aren't getting a chance. Why call them up without? But I'm also starting to wonder: is he putting too much? I call it mistake pressure on these players. So every night they're worried about making just a minute mistake, and that being the be all end all, and the shit hits the fan. I don't know. I have always found in sports that if your team's playing happy, you play a little better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because the alternative doesn't last. It wears on people, on players very quickly. Ask anybody who's ever played for John Tortorella about that.
Has Darryl Sutter lost this room?
I don't think at this point, because I know a lot of guys, and Johnny Gaudreau is one of them who really enjoyed playing for him. So I think there's a little bit of a misconception of what he's like as a coach. But I think some of his tactics are wearing a little thin. I think as a personality, he still has quite a bit of leash with the room, but he's got to be a bit more creative. And I think if he injects a bit more youth in the lineup, he plays with the power play a little bit more. He's got to step outside of his own box.
He's stubborn,
extremely stubborn, and you're not listening. The results are going to be the same night in, night out. Basically, more or less, a 500 hockey team if he doesn't start doing things differently.
I agree. I hope we start to see it because, like we talked about earlier, we're losing now. We might as well lose trying to find a solution.
Well, and who thought that Seattle was going to be this good, right? You can't tell me a team like the Oilers, who has McDavid and Draisaitl, is not going to get better down the stretch. They're not going to be as bad as they have been, I don't think, especially if Stuart Skinner continues to play well. I think Calgary has to make points.
I think Edmonton will be better. I keep waiting for Seattle to drop, but they don't. I wonder about LA a little bit. I look at their goal differential being a negative, and the only team that's in a playoff spot in the Western Conference that is a negative. That doesn't usually bode well. They've played more games than everybody else too, so I wonder if they don't slide down a little bit. I don't know. We need to figure out a way though where we can feel a little bit more comfortable and not just be happy getting a point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, because it's not the point you're gaining, it's the point you're losing that is becoming more and more important, right? Early in the season, shootout losses, overtime losses, they don't really bother me a whole lot. This point in the season is you need that extra point. You have to find a way as a team to grab that extra point or to not even go to overtime ideally, and they're not doing that.
Yeah. Well, let's preview what lies ahead for the Flames this week. Get all your Flames Unfiltered podcasts, team news, team updates, and highlights at flamesunfiltered.com. Well, Kyle, the Central Division trek continues Thursday night, the second of two straight in St. Louis after the crushing 4-3 overtime loss on Tuesday. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. And one of the things we can't forget is St. Louis is 2 points behind Calgary in that wild card spot. And this game means a lot tomorrow night.
Well, especially as the Blues get healthier, right? I mean, Ryan O'Reilly, who else? There was somebody else that missed the game last night.
Tarasenko,
Parayko, I think, as well. Krug, yes. Yeah, Krug's the one actually I was trying to think of on the back end. Yeah, like that team is nowhere near healthy. That's very similar to us missing Huberto, Toffoli, Hannafin, and Uyghur. Kind of like, you know what I mean? Like that team's gutted. So they're not going to get worse. So, you know, having them just 2 points back you, like, I don't know. I got to find a way to win that one tomorrow night.
Saturday afternoon, the Flames head into Dallas for a first of 3 meetings. They'll finish up that 3-game set with a home-and-home in March. Dallas currently first in the Central at 56 points, and the Stars are having a surprisingly miraculous season this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Have we seen them yet?
No, it's the first time.
Not at all. Yeah, you just said 3 times. Like, no, obviously we haven't. Not since that.
3 hard matchups in the second half of the year. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a fantastic playoff series last year. So, yeah, that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a really, really tough game.
The road trip continues Monday as Calgary heads into Nashville for their second of 3 meetings. Nashville pounded the Flames on November 3rd with a 4-1 win, and they do play one more time in Calgary in April. Nashville also kind of nipping at the wild card heels of the Flames. 1 point. Where are they currently? They are Nashville sitting at 44, Calgary at 47. They're right on our tails. Another team that I feel like should be dead, but Nashville keeps figuring out a way. They keep getting points.
Well, they're kind of like a lighter version of how the Red Wings used to be. Like they're competitive every year to some extent or another. I don't know how much longer it's going to last, but I mean, they had a great goaltending transition though from Pecorine to UC Saro. Like, yeah, you can't get a better passing the torch between the pipes than that. And I think that really set them up for a lot of success. So I don't think at Nashville, it's never easy 2 points, especially in that arena either. Those fans are great.
Yeah. I look at this time of the year, and we talked about it a little bit last week, as this being such an important time for the Flames, but also a difficult road trip that they're on right now, which is...
What's our longest winning streak this year? Do you know?
5 right out of the gate.
Yeah. So it's just to start the season.
I don't think we've won 3 straight since. I don't think we've won 3 straight since.
Yeah, and you think of all the last few seasons, there was always
an 8-game bender in the middle.
Yeah, there was a 10-game in 18-19, I remember. Might have been 11, actually. I don't remember anyway. But
didn't we have 11 last year, too? Didn't we get to 11 last year? I thought we tied it.
We got a hell of a lot closer, you know, than the 5 that we saw early in the year. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, we keep using the phrase making hay. I guess, you know, homage to Darryl Sutter, but like we need a winning streak. You know, this winning 2, losing 1, or losing 2 in overtime, like it's got to stop. They need some momentum to be built here, and it's not happening so far.
Well, with momentum comes confidence, and with confidence comes more wins. And yeah, we're not seeing it. And boy, we could use it right now. I think this is a real critical.
If we're having the same conversation a month from now, then you may as well kiss the playoffs goodbye, because those other teams we talked about, whether it's the Predators, the Oilers, the Blues, somebody's going to get hot in that time, and the Flames got to do the same thing, because this race is going to be just as tight right until April.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it is nice that we've salvaged points in the last 2, albeit very disappointing. But I mean, we have salvaged points, and we've stayed in the race. I feel like with the way we're playing, we have no business being in the race right now. But on a good note, we are in the race still. But this team's got to figure it out. We need to give the reins to Dan Vladar for a little bit and let Markstrom work back into it. Markstrom's a good goalie. He's not going anywhere. We don't need to trade Markstrom. Like, Markstrom's going to be our guy in the end. But like right now, we need games. We need wins, and we need some, confidence in our goaltending, and we're not getting it. So Vladar can bring us that. That's a luxury that the Flames have that we're not taking advantage of. So,
well, the goaltenders have a great relationship. So I'm sure if Sutter goes to Markstrom and says, "Listen, Dan's played really well lately. I'm going to give him a few starts." You know, it's not an indictment of your play. It's just we got to change things up a bit. You think he's going to have a problem with that?
No,
I mean,
it's going to push him.
It might hurt a little bit, yeah. But that's what a good goaltending tandem does. They push each other. So, I mean, of all the things we talked about, I think that's the number one thing that they need to do is ride him a little bit more, and then, you know, make adjustments from there. See where that puts us.
I couldn't agree more. Kyle and I are back next week, and Kyle, next week, are we talking about better news, or are we still in the doldrums of the 1 point games?
Every time I think I know anything, I'm wrong. So we'll have to wait and see.
Time will tell. But anyway, Kyle and I will be back next week. Check us out on all podcast platforms. Thanks for joining in, listening, supporting, all that good stuff. Have a good week, Flames fans. We're back next week. More Flames talk on Flames Unfiltered. Get connected. Flames Unfiltered can be found on Twitter at Flame Unfiltered. Check out the Facebook page at Flames Unfiltered. Host Brad Burud is on Twitter at Brad Burud, and host Kyle Lewis is on Twitter at VanLewis14. Like what you hear? Rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Flames Unfiltered can be found on all the major podcast players. Want to watch the show? You got it. Check out Inside Edge Hockey Media Group for every show. Subscribe while you watch. Thanks for listening, watching, and interacting. Enjoy the hockey action.
We call him playoff! Yeah, baby! Playoff! Yeah, baby!
Thanks for tuning in to Flames Unfiltered. Check back for more action-packed Calgary Flames talk. This episode of Flames Unfiltered was copyrighted and produced by Inside Edge Hockey Media Group.